all my people. And if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botch Pods and Share Shots. I'm your host, a chef by trade, no mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and joining me tonight is one of the hosts from Free Talk Wrestling. He's part of the Panda Wrestling Company family. He is Big Mike, the belt collecting heel. Mike, how are you, brother?
Good.
Are you dressing on camera for me?
Huh?
Are you getting dressed on camera for me?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is Botch Spots After Dark, so if there was ever an episode for you to decide to take your clothes off, this would be it.
Oh, damn. All right.
You can flip this. Okay, before we get going, there's a few housekeeping advice before we start rolling into this episode. Botch Spots and Share Shots After Dark is kind of the resting place for things like conspiracy theories, or what ifs, or, you know, the bigger broad strokes of that gray realm of reality. Sometimes things aren't perfectly black, sometimes things aren't perfectly white. So that being said, this is a disclaimer. There might be some triggers talked about in episodes. There might be things talking about unaliving. There might be triggers and flashes. So this is the one time where I'm going to say it to everybody. There's some viewer discretion advised. There might be some things brought up that if you're not okay, feel free to keep scrolling. We won't take it personally on this episode. That being said, tonight, Mike,
Yes.
you and I are going to have a conversation about somebody who's very notorious in the wrestling world. You have, we'll call a spade, my friend. You have a reputation on the TikTok world for being the Chris Benoit guy.
Yeah, I'm the Chris Benoit guy, and I mean, all my good deeds are really not, like, I'm not the belt guy, or the guy that gives away belts, or the guy that tries to help people out. I became the Chris Benoit guy, which I'm fine with. I don't care. People, like I said, come at me.
One of the things we want to do with this episode, it's a way for us to say, he is the head of Wrestle Talk HR. That is 100% a fact. We're not here to say what happened didn't happen. We understand that three people lost their lives that night. We're not here to say that some of the terrible things didn't happen. We're not here to praise what he did in any capacity. What Mike and I want to do is simply have a conversation about a few things that happened around that time that raised some questions. So, Mike, I'm going to let you tee off first. What's one of the things you specifically, when I asked you about this episode, what was one of the things you said to yourself, okay, this is a conversation I want to have? What led you here? What made you go, okay, this is what we should talk about this?
I've always wanted to have this conversation. You have your Benoit fans. And to be honest with you, the wrestling world is 50-50 when it comes to it. You have your people, but then you also have your conspiracy people. You have the people that are the Kevin Sullivan crap. You have the what if there's intruders, and then you have the what if this, or this happened. We know this happened. You don't know nothing. All right.
The only thing we can confirm is that three people lost their lives that night.
Yes. And my biggest thing, the reason why, is because me formerly being a wrestler and dealing with what I deal with, and there's a lot of other people that deal with it too. And we've lost lots of wrestlers between their 30s and 40s from the WWF. And this was just one of the most horrific ones. Because there's not only one person, but another two people were involved. And I want people to understand that at that time, there was a lot going on. You worked with concussions. You worked with broken necks. You worked with under painkillers and drugs and alcohol and all this stuff. And are they partially responsible? And yes, but at the same time, this is all they know. This is all they know. Ric Flair is still trying to wrestle because this is all he knows. And it's sad that we can cheer a guy at one point in time, and something, yes, horrific happened, and we could turn our backs on these guys in a heartbeat without second guessing something or looking at somebody else that might more be to blame than just that one person.
Let me ask you kind of a loaded question then. My job is to ask people questions that make them uncomfortable. I do it every day. I'm going to ask you a question that some people find uncomfortable. When it comes to him specifically, and we talk about him, are you one of the people that go, okay, let's separate the in-ring ability from the absolutely terrible things that happened that night? Are you able to separate the two factors, I guess? When you look at Benoit as a person, can you look at him as the person who did what he did, and then look at him as the person that he was in the ring as two separate entities?
Yes. I mean, they are. I mean, what he did in the ring was phenomenal. There's very few people that can even maybe remotely even compare to that, what he's done in the ring. Even newer guys right now, it's very hard to duplicate that. And yes, I can separate it, but unfortunately, every time we do speak about Benoit, what happens is that night it's brought up. So since it gets brought up, I'm going to go on the fence about it and say, we don't know what happened. All we know is 3 people died.
That's what I was about to say. I'll continue to reiterate that through the episode, and I'm tired, or I apologize ahead of time if it sounds tiring. I just have to echo this from a professional standpoint. We're not saying what happened didn't happen. We know 3 people died. Only one person had the choice that night. One of the things that I want to bring up, Mike, is ABC News in 2007, right after it happened. There were a few things that were tied to that day that rose some questions. The big one initially that got not necessarily debunked, but as far as what we were told were the previously before anything was found about the scene of the crime. Apparently there was some changes made to his Wikipedia page that said he missed the pay-per-view that Sunday to mourn the passing of his wife, Nancy. But nothing had been reported about what happened. So looking at it from that perspective, the FBI says they seized the computers, but they never reported where they came from or whose they were. If people in the chat this is one of those opportunities. If you've done some deep diving into this and you have other things, let us know. What do you think about this specifically with the Wikipedia page where it had been changed before anything had ever been reported? And once again, we're just speculating here.
Yep. And all right. So it is weird that it came from because WWE their HR or their whatever their headquarters are in, or their HQ is in Connecticut, and it's Connecticut, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it's in Atlanta.
Yeah. Huh?
Georgia.
Oh, I mean, where is it in Georgia? I thought it was in Connecticut.
Nope, Fayette County, Georgia.
All right, and then where did where was the Wikipedia when it was changed?
The Fayette County Police Department was quoted as saying they had traced the Wikipedia posting and subsequent anonymous confessions and apologies to an IP address in Connecticut. Okay. So the changes were made in Connecticut. What happened was in Georgia. We know who the person is.
I'm talking about WWHQ.
WWEHQ was in Connecticut, yes. The IP address that made the changes to the Wikipedia were also in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're saying they know who it was. Yeah. The identity wouldn't be released, and then the identity wasn't ever released. But nothing was ever implicated past that point. So all we know, it was changed, then it was changed back or taken off, and then they said they found out who it was, and then it never got brought up again.
Yeah. And supposedly, from my understanding, it was a kid that did it. Um, I gotta look back at the stuff I was watching, but I think they did release the person. I'm not sure if they. I don't remember
The
if they
article
did
from
or not.
ABC News
They
released in
didn't.
'07 and then edited in February of '09.
Yeah.
Um, the posting was confirmed to ABC News by Wikipedia spokesman Sandra Ordonez on Thursday. So it was confirmed from Wikipedia that the changes happened and then were changed back. Um, they said that the Benoit entry had been changed hundreds of times, starting from the Sunday night when the entry changed all the way through the next week. They said it
Yeah.
was a site of vandalism on their website where people were making erroneous changes to his page and stuff. So there were
Mm-hmm.
a lot of semi red flags that kept popping up around this Wikipedia page over and over again. Do you think, is this just one of those dust in the wind conspiracies, or do you think this is just the first red flag in this story that goes up in the air?
I think it's the first red flag, which kind of it's weird because it was update it was updated the day of Nancy's death, right?
Mm-hmm. It was this was updated Sunday night that he missed the pay-per-view that night because of the
Yeah.
death of his family.
Yeah. So it's weird for someone to do that and it actually happened. So with that, there's no that instead of really looking into it and all that stuff, it raises like this is why a lot of fans are doing the conspiracy thing. It's like what happened that fucking night. I'm not gonna sit there and listen to what somebody tells me. I want to look into it myself. I was telling you about a investigator. She was going to college to be a investigator, and she dug deep into this stuff. She said a lot of things didn't make any sense. Why this happened? Why would you do this? This, everything looked too suspicious and way too, out of line um, for it to be like a actual police actually doing it. Like they did not know what the hell they were doing. So this is why everybody also wants to try to look at like their innocence. This is why we have what if somebody broke in? What if the Kevin Sullivan, which I'm not saying. They're saying all kinds of shit. He was also before that he was taking alternate routes like home. He was already kind of losing it at that point. So was there somebody following him? Was he just losing his mind? Like,
Playing devil's advocate, then Larry McDivitt, the longtime attorney and representative of WWE, Vince McMahon's long-standing attorney, going back to the steroid trials, all that nonsense in the '90s, '80s. He's been representing them as long as Vince McMahon's been Vince McMahon. Okay, Larry McDivitt, the attorney, has said that Benoit and his wife had been arguing over whether the wrestler should take his time off to help care for their son Daniel. Daniel had some rare medical conditions.
yeah,
So, I mean, when you look at it like that, though, and you look at the issues that they had in their marriage, the McDivitt just said it. There was issues there because of Daniel and his health. You look at the fact that he had been dealing with a self-diagnosis of depression since 2006 with the company. Then
yeah,
you start adding some of these things up, and it goes into a question about mental health. And this is kind of
yeah,
tough to talk about, especially as men, because sometimes as men we're told, man up,
yeah.
especially in wrestling. So let me ask you a question this time, specifically about mental health awareness. As somebody who's worked in the business, especially if you think, and I know you weren't in the business that far back, but I
Yeah.
mean, even just 5 years, whatever, how much did they put into mental awareness in the business, like mental health awareness?
All right. Well, I seen different people, and the guy my promoter was more like, can you do this? And you're like, yeah, because anybody can take your spot at any point in time. There's always that person that's a little bit younger that can take that spot for you just missing a day, and you don't want to lose that. And I've seen some back then be like, hey, just suck it up, get through with this match, and then just, sign some autographs and then go home. I've seen that. I've seen a lot of things, and back then, mental health and injuries were just kind of like, you're a wrestler, it's gonna happen. So
You're gonna get hurt, right? It's
just
the
suck it up.
It's the business.
Yeah, just you got to suck it up. You got to get through it, and that's and some people's experience is different, But once again, there's people that have been wrestling, that was wrestling a little bit before me, that they had the promoters that gave a shit about them, and they're like, yeah, dude, you're not doing this. Some promoters were like, dude, we just need to get through this, or other ones would say, suck it up. It really depends where you were.
I recently said on another show that I felt like prior to COVID in 2020 and then after COVID in 2020, there was a light switch that went off. And all of a sudden, everybody became very aware that mental health was a real life thing. Do you agree with that statement specifically in wrestling? Do you feel like it also had that light switch went off where they were kind of went, okay, it's okay to not be okay now?
I think a lot of eyes opened after the Benoit tragedy.
So you think maybe it started before then, even earlier than 2020 then?
Yeah, I think it started to kind of, eyes were opening, but they weren't fully open.
Okay.
It wasn't until like you said, after, the whole COVID stuff, that's when people really start kind of taking it serious.
Mm-hmm. Another side of it too, and injury in the ring is something you have to recover from. Mental health and injury recovery, they play a hand in hand. I've had guys that have came on this show, Vic Delicious, Mike Mondo. They've talked about how hard it is to recover from injury. You've been in the ring. You've suffered from concussions. You and I have talked about that. So this is going to segue back into Benoit. But let's talk about, from your perspective, what was it like for you to recover from injury and to come back in your mental health?
Really didn't, to be honest with you. After I got hurt, no doctor would, like, my concussions were one thing, but my back injury, no doctor would, until I had that fusion. They wanted me to have a fusion, and I didn't want that because I'd be out way too long, for months. And I'm like, and plus that, something can go wrong and all this stuff. And I didn't trust it. So, that's when I went back, it was more of just kind of on working with the promoter as a promoter.
So you weren't ever able to go back to the ring then?
No, he wouldn't let me back in.
It was because of the injury you couldn't get cleared?
Yeah.
I guess we could segue with that then. With that as the mental health side of it, like to kind of have it taken away from you then. Not even the recovery side of it, but to just have it taken away and you just not be able to wrestle at all anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I still deal with the back pains, legs every now and then, my knees and stuff like that. And then, yeah, the mental health of seeing what I could have done and, what if I just did this? I could be something right now. I could be somewhere instead of, talking about it. I would have been maybe a name, maybe, but in wrestling, it's always a maybe. It's not, you're guaranteed this. There's people that work on the indie circuit for the rest of, like, all their life, and they never get that shot.
Outside of that, so we know that Chris was suffering with the depression. He had the injuries. There was also the anabolic steroids. They talked a lot about roid rage with him and how angry he was. How much do you think the steroids played into what happened that weekend?
I don't think it was. I don't think it wasn't roid rage, because roid rage will only last for about 5-10 minutes. That's it. And I guess really that's all it really takes. But it wasn't. It could have been a combination on top of it, but it was long-term use of the painkiller hydrocodone or any kind of painkiller, like oxy or anything like that. Long-term use will starts to you start having mood swings. You not only the mood swings, you'll have like, you know, what you normally would take wouldn't be, you know, your body starts kind of getting used to it and stuff like that. And at that time, doctors would, you know, prescribe it to you for a fucking headache. And unfortunately, long-term use will add on to depression. And when you're already depressed and then you're taking painkillers on top of it, that's adding on to the depression. So it's making you a lot worse than making you feel better. And adding on an antidepressant, the antidepressant's not working because of the painkiller kind of overtaking that.
Another equation as we continue to walk down this, you know, climb into our rabbit hole and go down this, is the CTE side of it. You and I have had that conversation as well. And we've seen what CTE has done to people in the past and led them to make, you know, not the greatest decisions. We've seen people, especially in the NFL, we've had guys in the NHL that have taken their own lives because of it. So Chris Benoit here isn't the first with CTE to do it. He was maybe one of the first big stories to do it. Now let's look at it from that perspective, and specifically the CTE that was later found for him. He was later diagnosed with CTE, I guess is the clear-cut way to say it. Looking at it then, how much do you think the CTE played into what happened that weekend?
All right, so
once again, we're not doctors. We're speculating here, people.
Oh, yeah. Me. I'm gonna kind of take it from where I believe kind of happened. They said that he had I think it took a major part on top of the depression. And understand, when you're depressed and then you add on to more depression, because, like, let's say one thing happened one after another. And from my understanding, he was dealing with Eddie, his best friend, that was always there for him anytime he needed him and all this stuff. They talked on the phone on a regular basis. They worked together for years. They were always on the road together. And everybody that looked back at it, Benoit was the, hey, let's knock this off. You know, let's not do this. I forgot who it was. I think it was Stevie Ray actually told a story about how he was going to punch, I forgot what wrestler it was. And Benoit was like, hey, let's not do this, you know? So there was something, you know, that you've seen the kindness and all that stuff that he had. But now, sorry, I don't mean to get off track, but
no.
With CTE and the long-term, you know, the headbutts, what could have took a major part, the chair shots, and I'm gonna say this, Vince McMahon really not going, hey, you need to go get checked out. It's the same thing with Eddie. When Eddie would be slunched over after a match, he didn't say, you need to take time off. I'm concerned about you, nothing else. He wasn't. That's what I'm talking about. There was no fucks given back then. It was all about work. And if you take that time off, you lose your spot. And wrestlers work their asses off to get to where they are, just to move 10 steps back. With the CTE, I'm not a fucking doctor, but I believe what happened that night. His brain was mush. He was going through a lot of depression at that time. His brain just shut off. It just shut off. What he did, I mean, I believe, you know, he did what he did. And then when he woke up the next day, he realized what he did. He's like, holy crap, what the fuck did I do? And try to do the scripture on the Bible about raising a child from the dead. When he did that, he found out he couldn't do it, and he couldn't live with himself for what he did to his son and his wife. And then he took his own.
It's such a tough topic to talk about. WWE has a track record of, I'm not going to say covering up or sugarcoating. That might not be the best way to put it. But when it comes to talent and their mental health, another one that was gone too early because of some mental health issues was China. Vince Russo, I was lucky enough to interview Russo, and I talked to him because it had been just after 6 years of China's passing, and I asked Vince to speak on his relationship with China, and he said that up until the day before what happened with China happened, she was reaching out and pleading with WWE to take her calls, let them talk to her, and WWE wouldn't talk. And Russo said that he blamed the WWE for what happened. We see how they've handled everything up until this, and we see what happened that night. This is a really tough question. With you not being an employee there, with me not being an employee there, do you think there could have been more done for the employees in way of mental health awareness and helping these people find the help they needed? Because, once again, it's okay to not be okay. Could the WWE maybe have done more to help prevent these things from happening? Specifically with Benoit and China.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna say the same thing with Eddie. We're gonna add Eddie into that too, because I do
drug addiction is very, very real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it can be very much just as much of a demon as any of these other things. Depression, mental health, they all lump together as mental health awareness. Yes.
Yeah. So they are a multi-billion-dollar company. You mean that you can't go get some kind of insurance? Hire an actual, therapist to try to be on the road with you to try to help. You understand? You're away from your family for 365, and there's times you go years, months, without seeing your family at all, and that's going to take a toll on you. I mean, that's why Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins, they go together. They travel together. They bring their kid with them. They're always on the road. But it's more taken care of now. But I'm just saying, like back then, they're a multi-billion-dollar company. You mean you could not hire, like, hey, we need a couple therapists. We hear that you're great, blah blah blah, or at least make sure that people are seeing people each night. Like, hey, you look like there's something going on. I need you to go see the therapist. There's multi-billion-dollar companies. Apple has a fucking therapist. Microsoft has one. There's multi-million-dollar companies that actually have this stuff, and you mean that WWE couldn't do the same fucking thing?
Let's look at another piece and another one of the red flags and pieces of this puzzle. And it's the infamous cell phone. You had brought up the running around and kind of taking different routes home. He was acting kind of paranoid. He seemed a little bit off. When you look at what he was doing on his phone beforehand, he was texting people erratically. He was saying, I love you, like all of these things. Seemed very, his friends, including like Chavo, were saying like, Chris didn't seem right. Then when the crime scene happened and the investigation happened, the missing cell phone clause. There seems to be a lot of circles around the fact that Chris's cell phone never turned up. We don't know about what happened when these messages were sent or why or how. We know how they were sent from his phone to the phones, and we know with timestamps or whatever from the phone records. But we don't know who else he was, like, what else was happening on that phone beforehand and stuff like that. How big of a piece of the puzzle do you think the missing phone is?
It's a big one, because then that also brings into play, and I'm not saying that anybody was there. I still stick to what I said, happened. But that also brings up, like, was there actually somebody there? Did someone do this? You have a neighbor that the cops allowed to bring the dogs in, and I think it was a she. I believe it was a she.
It was a next door neighbor. She watched their dogs. They talk about that in the Dark Side episode, because the neighbor would come over and let the dogs in and out of the house like
Yeah.
almost daily, why the Benoits were either Chris was on the road or why Nancy and Daniel were out and about. Like the neighbor readily had a key to and from that house. Kevin
Yeah.
Sullivan had a key to their house. Like there were
Yes.
multiple people that had access to and from this place. And then miraculously, for a 5-day period from the Wednesday to the Monday or whatever it was, all of a sudden the Benoit complex becomes a ghost town and nobody comes in or out. When
Yeah.
there are multiple people inside the family and outside the family that have access to this place, and then all of a sudden, poof, nobody
Yeah.
comes in or out for days.
Yeah. And see, this is the thing. What gets me, we've already talked that there was another person that died that day.
That's like it's coming up on my list. Well, that's the very
Okay.
next thing. So let's finish this
all
train
right,
of thought, and then we'll roll into that.
Yeah. So yeah, with that being said, there's multiple people that had access to the house. Not only people had access to the house, but you have text message after Benoit passed away that still went through. There's a missing
But we
phone.
never saw the phone.
There's not no phone.
Mm-hmm.
On top of it, when the lady went in there was no smell. On the hottest Georgia day, no smell. And supposedly there's supposed to be 2 bodies that were there for almost 2 to 3 days.
Well, they know for a fact, according to the toxicology screens, that Nancy's body had been there. She had been deceased long enough that there had been deterioration on a molecular level with her blood, that they couldn't tell if the alcohol in her bloodstream was from deterioration or from actual like imbibing alcohol before her death. Like, so the smell is a big question, because if she had been, if she had been unalived for that long, wouldn't she have started to smell? But the house didn't have a smell. The other question is the missing key. There was a key they kept outside in like a false rock that multiple people knew about, but when they told the cops about it, the cops were never able to locate the missing key because they had the bonus key outside. You know what I'm talking about? The little like hide a rock bullshit. They had one of those or something similar to it, but nobody ever found the missing key. People said it existed, but this backdoor key never turned up. So this is another stick where I raise another red flag in the story and go, what piece of the puzzle does this represent now?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, there's so many missing key, missing cell phone, Wikipedia page in Connecticut where WWE headquarters happens to be. You have a text message that still went through after Benoit passed away.
A confirmed TOD.
A lot of this is why people are like, something happened. There's no way. And that town or where they were never seen anything like this before. So the cops were not ready for this type of thing. And another thing I gotta say, it's wrong for the cops to allow that woman to go into the house. And and then for her to go upstairs and all that stuff and then come running out saying they're dead. She was supposed to go in and come out, and she didn't do that. So that's another.
That's what I was going to say. So I'm raising my next red flag here. The fact that the police were so nonchalant. WWE had called the Fayetteville and Atlanta police departments. Hey, we're calling for a welfare check on one of our wrestlers, Christopher Benoit or whatever. There's recordings of it. You can hear it on Dark Side. No free shout outs. So then you talk about the fact that when I say the mishandling of a crime scene, typically police officers aren't quick to go, hey, random neighbor, we're not sure your real relationship. You told us they let you in and out of their house. How about you go over there and you do our wellness check for us? Like, how realistic is it, do you think? Like, why would the cops just let a random neighbor into the house when they think for a wellness check?
Yep, and it's that too. Yep, that's another thing that just, there's so many things that take place in this, and like, why are not people really looking into this? And this is why I love it. When I find that YouTube video, I'm gonna send it to you.
When you send it to me, I'll post it on Botchbots and Share Shots. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Mike. I
No, you're
apologize.
fine. You're fine.
I'll shameless plug the .com now.
Oh
What
yeah,
I'll
so
do is I'll put the plugs and the links. I'll post the ABC News article that I pulled from the archives from '07 and '09. I'll post all of these in a Google Doc and share it to the .com. This won't be going to our Spotify and stuff like that. This is going to be after tonight's live broadcast. This is going to be what we're going to call our secret stash. That's where we're going to put our After Dark episodes, because these are a little bit more touchy conversations. These are going to be more adult friendly. You know what I mean? These aren't conversations I would want, my kid to hear. You know what I mean? Like these are going to be handled differently than our normal content. But I appreciate Cam, Cobra. I appreciate everybody sticking around. While you're hit the follow button, Mike, I'm ready to stick my next pole in the ground, man. Let's plant another red flag here.
right.
We're about the halfway mark. I want to tell everybody again, we're not saying anything happened than what happened. Three people lost their lives. Only Chris had a choice. But Mike, let's continue down our rabbit hole, man.
Yeah.
The same day Chris was found dead and everything happened, in his hometown, he had a cousin that was also found unalived with some really uncomfortable scenarios. There were some questions about how he did, because it was really unexpected. This is one side of the coin that a lot of people don't want to talk about. So I ring through and I look at you and I go, Mike, how much do you think that played a role in this? Because we only know 3 people were unalived that night. Then the story stops. We're not putting all of these separate pieces together, but now here's this piece about another family member in Benoit's family dying thousands of miles away in Canada on miraculously the same day from questionable, it was ruled a self unaliving, but it was one of those like questionable ones. If I said it that way, would that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think about that, and how do you think that maybe ties into all this?
And that's the tag team partner, right? That he tagged with.
Former tag team partner, cousin, when they were in Stampede Wrestling. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And see, that's I brought that to you
we talked about that on one of our TikTok lives.
Yeah. That's another thing that just makes it just more what the fuck,
Agreed.
There, if whatever, with everything being said, and I'm sure everybody's already heard most of this stuff, and then adding on to another person dying thousands of miles away, like in Canada, happens to be related, plus former tag team partner of Chris. That's not telling you guys that there's something fucking going on. I don't know what is. Are you telling me that Benoit called and said, hey, we're going to both take our lives?
When you look at... This is going to be a loaded question. Are you a Nirvana fan?
I'm not a big fan, but I mean, I've heard of them, yeah.
Okay, you at least know who Kurt Cobain is.
Yeah.
The historic moment in April, Kurt took his own life. He also had addictions and dark sides, and he had a really hectic past. There's always been this conspiracy behind Kurt Cobain's death that he didn't do it. Okay. This is where I hit the pause button, and I'm drawing a very clear line. I'm going to talk about Kurt Cobain for about the next 60 seconds before we go back to Benoit. So this is me drawing a line, different conspiracy theory altogether. Now we're looking at Cobain. Then we're going to bridge back, okay? In Cobain's little circle here, okay? He was on narcotics, the H word, with needles and stuff. He had taken a whole lot. And then everything that he did after that point, he neatly put everything away. He set everything up. He cleaned everything around him. He got his boom boom stick out. He loaded his boom boom stick. He went through all the processes. Anybody who's ever done hard narcotics understands the fact that very seldom do you worry about cleaning up afterwards. You're not going to do it and then clean everything up and put everything away and make sure everything is nice and neat and tidy and wiped down. Especially not if you're planning to put the long end of a shotgun in your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was where some of the conspiracy theories arose with Kurt Cobain was how could that happen if, you know what I mean? He didn't do it. You know, love was involved, other people, it was the record company, all of these things, because how could he have pulled that off and done that himself if he was under the influence of so many drugs, right?
Yeah.
All right. That's kind of where the conspiracy with Cobain lies. So now I'm going to segue back over to Benoit, okay? When we look at Benoit's situation, the wine and beer and alcohol and the drug, the opioids and the painkillers and the antidepressants, everything that was tied together, all of the alcohol, okay? Let me ask you a personal question. You ever been drunk?
Yes.
Have you ever been shitty on, say, like 12 beers and a bottle of wine, like good old-fashioned white girl wasted?
Yes.
Okay. When you get home after your white girl wasted, do you take the time to sanitize your gym and wipe your gym down and make sure everything's put away and everything's nice and neat and you clear out your trash bags and all your trash cans are empty? Like, are these the things you do before you go to bed at night after you get shithouse drunk?
No, if I'm shithouse drunk, I'm gonna find the greasiest food I can eat, and I'm passing the fuck out.
Okay, because in the Benoit house, and you can you can see the crime scene photos online. Once again, I'll try to find some subreddits and stuff where we can locate them. One of the sides, this is me planting another one of the red flags, Mike. Hold on, wrong hand. Boom, I'm planting a red flag, okay?
Yeah.
Upon the crime scene investigation, they stated that the gym almost looked immaculate outside of where Benoit was at. You know what I mean? Like the whole gym had been sanitized and cleaned and wiped down. All of the wine bottles were stacked up and nice and neat. All of the trash cans that had been emptied. Like everything was nice, neat, and tidy, except for where he was at. The other bodies had been nice and organized. Does this sound like, you know, once again, it's conspiracy. I'm just saying, what if? I'm not changing anything that happened in reality. Does this sound like a deranged madman who's roid-rated out, drunk on opiates and antidepressants? Does it sound like he's going to go through his house and like deep clean and sanitize everything before he decides to unalive everybody he's ever loved and cared for?
It is suspicious.
That was really long-winded. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. It is suspicious. But he didn't have a drop of alcohol in his body when they checked it. Nancy did, but he didn't. I just want to put that out there. And one more thing before I get on that. Another thing that not many people know, Nancy was also prescribed hydrocodone from the same doctor. And I believe the count that both them got were, I think, around 150 to 200 pills.
Is that a lot? I hate to sound ignorant when it comes to that kind of thing. I mean, 150, that's what, 5 a day?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's a lot. Never mind.
Yeah. So I believe, don't count me on the count.
No.
I know
Once
there
again,
was
speculation. We're speculating.
Yeah. And she was taking them too.
Okay.
Like, she was prescribed and he was. Now, to get to what you were asking, is that like someone? Now, it really depends where his mind was. If he was not in the right state of mind, once again, he didn't have a drop of alcohol in his body. So with that, your brain can kind of go on autopilot, even if you're not fully there. It's a creature of habit.
For sure.
So if he was a cleanliness person where it's like, this has to be here, this has to be here, this has to be perfect, he could have been a just straight autopilot doing everything. It's more of a knee-jerk reaction, in my opinion, if that's actually what happened.
I've got 2 more questions for you. Okay. The first one is going to be a semi-loaded question. It's going to be, if you look at the career of Nancy Benoit from beginning to end, everything she did. You take into the consideration, like I've said, the last 45 minutes of everything we've talked about, we've set up a lot of red flags. We couldn't take away anything that was said or done. All we did was raise questions of speculation where questions of speculation have been raised in the past. Okay? Looking at it now, Nancy unfortunately lost her life that night. Before that, she had runs in the territories. She had runs with Kevin Sullivan in GCW, Georgia Championship Wrestling, not Game Changer Wrestling. The old school versus new school fans in the crowd. Then you look at her role as a manager, as woman, everything she did in WWF, a former women's champion, everything that Nancy did as an in-ring worker and a valet. Do you think Nancy Benoit has done enough to warrant a place in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
Do you think it's unfair that everything has been taken away from her because of what Chris did that night? Because her legacy has been completely erased from the wrestling history books now because of what he did, even though you say, and I agree, I'll agree to it, I think Nancy Benoit deserves a place in the Hall of Fame for what she did. Do you think that if they were going to allow a Benoit in the Hall of Fame, that Nancy should be the one to do it? Just look at it, Nancy, because my next question is going to be your chance to go off.
Okay. Yes, I believe that she deserves to be in there. I believe she should be. To be honest with you, if it was me running it, she would go in there, and Daniel would get the Warrior Award.
Sorry, I love Dr. Pepper. It's delicious. All right, Mike. My next question, before we get ready to plug everything and go home for the night. Do you think, with WWE's track record, okay, and because of the nature of the After Dark and everything we've discussed so far tonight, I'm going to bring up some names that are in the WWF Hall of Fame that, in their own regard, will warrant their own After Dark show down the road. Carlos Colon, the Finger Man that eventually ended up to the death of Bruiser Brody. He's in the WWF Hall of Fame, WWE Hall of Fame. Superfly Jimmy Snuka, who in all regards was finger pointed and said he's the reason why his girlfriend OD'd and died. He's the one who sold her the drugs. He's a WWF Hall of Famer.
Yep, and don't forget Vince McMahon picked him up
the night it happened.
And helped clean up and ran away.
We have seen the things that have happened with Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis is an NFL Hall of Famer, rather. Ray Lewis was accused and acquitted of murder 2 separate times, meaning there wasn't enough evidence to prove him guilty. Therefore, he wasn't found guilty. You know what I mean? He wasn't necessarily proven innocent, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove him guilty. So he was able to get off from the charges. That happened twice. Ray Lewis is an NFL Hall of Famer. O.J. Simpson. I could continue on. You already see where I'm going with this. They've allowed to separate the art from the person before in other fields and in wrestling. Do you think there'll ever be a point where the WWE looks into the crowd, separates the art from the person, and allows Chris Benoit to ever be in a Hall of Fame? Do you think that ever happens in our lifetime?
All right. From my understanding, I believe Jimmy Snuka was taken out of the Hall of Fame.
Has he been officially removed? If he has been, I stand corrected. So. I'm flaws. I mean, I can make mistakes.
No. I'm saying I believe so.
Okay.
But once you're in the Hall of Fame, you should stay in there. I don't give a care, because what you did outside the ring compared to what you did inside should be separated completely. You devoted yourself to that craft. You made that company or that person a shit ton of fucking money. And you should be looked at for what your accolades are, then look past what happened. For Hall of Fame wise, yes.
I don't. In my 2 cents on it, I'm not sure that the WWE will ever do that. We've seen the WWE do some cowardice things. We saw what they released the DVD the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, which showed you all the absolutely terrible things that Jim Hellwig was doing towards the end of his life. And then, they kissed and made up and they pretended like that DVD never got released. I'm going to do an episode on that. I just found my copy of the DVD. Can't wait to do the watch along for the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. This goes back to it, man. Let's call a spade a spade. One last thing before I let you plug in and go home. Does the WWE play a bigger role in all of this than what they're trying to lay on? We've seen their handling of so many touchy subjects. Is this the WWE's fault? Let's call a spade a spade.
Mm-hmm. So, real quick, I'm going to go back real quick. Yes, do I believe Chris Benoit deserves to be in the Hall of Fame? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I believe that he will be put in there eventually? I hope so. And people got to understand that Benoit still has surviving family that has to hear this. He has a son that believes he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. His son is sitting there and has to hear a lot of you guys go out there and trash his father when he's you seeing him break down on the dark side of the ring. This is affecting him more than you guys think. All right, with people trashing him and all that stuff. He sees these videos. He does. And I think people really need to take a step back and stop trashing the man. And then your other question was, can you say it one more time for me, the other one?
With everything we've seen, this is just a really broad stroke question. We've seen everything the WWE's done and the way they've handled everything from Superfly Jimmy Snuka to China to the Benoit stuff, everything they've done over time. They've had a lot of blood on their hands, man. How much of a role do you think the WWE plays in all of this?
I think they take the majority of the role. Test. And then also to add another man that not many people talk about, Perry Saturn. Perry Saturn lives here in Minnesota. I remember when he had a GoFundMe set up because he didn't know what he was going to do. He has CT. He had depression. He didn't know what he was going to do. He was close to suicide multiple times. And if it wasn't for the woman that he met, he'd still be in the same spot. WWE did not reach out to him and go, hey, we want to help you. We want to get you back on track. We don't want to see one of our former people that, worked so hard and made us money. We don't want to see you guys hurt. We want to try to fix this. You're a multi-billion-dollar company, and you couldn't reach out to this man that was crying on fucking camera and not try to fucking fix it? No. They don't care. They made their money. You are a peon in the company. That's all you are.
The boss brings up a question in the chat. She says, what do you think about him being blacklisted because of his last name for something he had nothing to do with? In regards to Benoit's oldest son, the one that was with his mom when everything happened. He's tried to take on the role as a professional wrestler, and he's having trouble getting booked because he's wrestling under the name Benoit. Do you think that's fair for them to blacklist him from something that he had nothing to do with?
No, it's not fair. I know they said, oh, you can change your name, blah, blah, blah. No. If he wants to go by Benoit, let the man go by Benoit. You may think that it's in poor taste. It's not. It's really not. You have fans that will watch it. Like, give them a shot. Just do it. Pull the trigger. No pun intended. No pun intended. Pull the trigger and let the man come out and give it a shot. That's all you could do. I mean, if you can stick a needle in someone's fucking dick, you mean you can't let him come out there and fucking wrestle under a match Benoit?
I don't necessarily. I've seen some mud show shit in my day. You and I both know. We've talked about it a ton. I watch a ton of indie wrestling, man. I've seen some shit. And if SPW can get away with some of the stuff they've done, then I don't see why Benoit's oldest son can't wrestle. Yeah. Give the kid a shot. Let him have a chance. Even if change his name. Worst case scenario, make shout out Uncensored Society. He says, "What's up, Mike? Loving the website. Keep killing it. Appreciate you stopping by, Bubba. Remember to hit that follow button while you're here, guys. Anybody who's here, stop by, show us some love, drop a follow. Mike, I thoroughly enjoy the conversation. It was deep. It was telling. We did a good job of, reiterating the fact we weren't changing history. We were just speculating on red flags. So I appreciate you popping my bot shots and chair shots after dark, Cherry, and coming by and hanging about and chatting about some wrestling with me, man. This is everybody's favorite part, though, because I shut the fuck up. I don't say anything. Plug yourself. Put yourself over. Tell everybody where to find you. What's going on with Free Talk, Panda Wrestling Company, all of that nonsense. Ready, set, go.
Real quick, I just want to say, for those that heard this and for those that of you are going to hear this later on, please actually think for yourselves and actually look into the stuff and understand that a lot of people were hurt, even fans were. All right. You can find me at All Wrestling for Life on TikTok. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. You can also find me at Shady09MN on Twitter as well. I'm all over the place. I am the belt collector. I'm pretty much everything. I am just want to sit here and just talk about wrestling and enjoy it. And I respect everybody's opinions. Like he says, we don't yuck anybody's yums. And I did just enjoy all the conversations that we can have. If you want to have a debate, we can have a debate. We can have a civil one, as long as we're not disrespectful.
Mike, I appreciate the shit out of you coming by for me, man.
And don't forget to check us out on Panda Wrestling Company and Free Talk Wrestling on Tuesdays after NXT.
Boom, there it is. That's what I was hoping for, because this coming Tuesday I'll be on Panda Wrestling.
Yep,
you can also check me tomorrow. What's up?
Yep. I was trying to get it all out, and it kind of drew a blank. My mind doesn't work like
that. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. This is my chance right now. On our regular episode of Botch Spots and Chair Shots, I do my shout-outs here. I want to take a second and thank the people that are here hanging out with us tonight. So I'm going to shout out Cam. I'm going to shout out Cobra. I'm going to shout out the boss bitch, Allison, Sammy, Jen, all the Wrestle Talk guys that came over to support me and Mike doing Botch Spots After Dark. I appreciate all of you guys. Remember, while you're here, thank you for being here. Remember to hit that follow button for us. Give us a follow, give us a like, comment, subscribe, everything you can do. It's going to help the algorithm. Mike, any closing words before I say a bunch of stuff real fast and we go to an outro?
I want to say thank you for having me on. Allison, also, thank you for letting me call on your guys' platform.
Always, man.
And actually having this opportunity. And I hope to have a lot more than these. And hopefully Allison can join next time.
She was a little bit... She'll probably be here for a couple episodes, especially when we get into the Owen Hart. I bet she'll be here for that one. Okay. Well, here it comes. Now, as we close another episode of Botch Spots and Chair Shots, I'm going to take a minute. Thank you for listening. Remind you to go wherever you do anything on the internet. Like, follow, subscribe, unsubscribe, then subscribe again. Leave a comment telling me how great I am or how terrible I sound. Either way, it helps the algorithm and it helps find new listeners. If you're feeling really just to be one of the VIP people, head over to patreon.com and donate to the Rivet City Radio Podcast Network. You get some fantastic swag. We get some fantastic guests. It's a win-win. For the belt collector, Big Mike the Heel, I am the Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.